Welcome to the Debrief, Carolina Journal's weekly recap of everything happening in public policy and politics. I'm Donna King. I'm editor-in-chief of Carolina Journal, but this time we're on the road. We're in Chicago at State Policy Network's annual meeting, learning all about what other states are doing in big policy decisions like school choice, energy policy, and some of those lessons from COVID lockdowns. Okay, joining us this week, we have Jordan McGillis of the Manhattan Institute, lots of energy policy, school choice, everything. We're going to be getting to what you think. And then Corey DeAngelis, self-described school choice evangelist, and from the American Federation for Children. Thanks for being here. And of course, David Bass can't do school choice without you. He's been covering school choice for education in CJ for a long time. I appreciate it. And bringing it in here, we have Buzz Brockway from the Georgia Center for Opportunity. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. This has been an insanely busy week. I appreciate you making time for us. First of all, North Carolina. I'm going to start with you, Corey, if I can. North Carolina's been really working on expanding school choice, finding a bit of an obstruction in our governor. We were talking just before we went on that North Carolina is in a unique position if they're able to create a universal school choice program.
Yeah, and it's going to happen. All Republicans joined together, locked arms, and signed on to the bill run by Tricia Cotham, who switched parties heroically on the issue of school choice and other issues as well. And the governor's freaking out. Roy Cooper, who's a hypocrite on school choice, sent his own kid to private school and then tries to close the door behind his family to not allow less advantaged families to have school choice opportunities. So he's a huge hypocrite, and he also declared a state of emergency once he found out that there was all of these Republicans signed on. That gives them just enough votes to override an expected veto from Roy Cooper. So look, and this would be a huge win for, and first of all, this is not a state of emergency for parents, it's a state of serendipity for parents. It's a state of emergency for Democrat politicians who overly rely on campaign contributions from special interest groups like teachers unions. But look, we've had so much success in the past 2 years alone. We've had 9 states go all in on school choice, meaning every single family's eligible regardless of income, regardless of background, regardless of zip code. This is the Milton Friedman vision of educational freedom going universal. But those have all been in states that have GOP trifectas, where the Republicans control the governor's office and both chambers. North Carolina will be a special case. It'll be the first state to go universal with a Democrat governor, not because Roy Cooper's going to go along with it. It's because the Republicans have enough power to override his veto if he does one.
Sure. Tell me what you think, Jordan. You're probably seeing a lot of this information passing through the Manhattan Institute.
Well, for me, it's all about pluralism, and that's what I see with school choice is opportunities for people to put their own values into education. I think North Carolina is a state where that is really coming to a head. It's wonderful to watch. Sure,
it is. Do you think that this has kind of come about as part of COVID? It feels like it coalesced during those school lockdowns. North Carolina was locked down. Public schools were locked down almost 2 years. I think they all started to go back third quarter of the second year of it, and it's been devastating for our test scores.
Without question, it's totally changed our political culture, and it's sparked a new interest from families in what's happening outside the home, because we were forced to stay inside our homes and see via the Zoom screen what was happening behind those previously closed doors.
Yeah, we've all kind of joked that we should really give an award to Randy Weingarten and the teachers unions for overplaying their hand by pushing to keep the schools closed, lobbying the CDC to do so. Chicago's union, we're here in Chicago right now, they deleted a tweet saying that the push to reopen schools is rooted in racism, sexism, and misogyny. They threw everything at the wall to see what would stick because they were holding children's education hostage to secure multiple multi-billion-dollar ransom payments from the taxpayer. And it kind of worked for them, but it had the side benefit of them overplaying their hand. Parents got to see what the heck was going on in the classroom. Now the argument for school choice has gone way beyond standardized test scores, and Vodi Bakum said it best. We cannot continue to send our children to Caesar for their education and be surprised when they come home as Romans. Well, guess what? The parents aren't surprised anymore, and they're pushing for education freedom.
Sure. Buzz, I'm going to go to you. What are you seeing happening in Georgia? I know this is a big issue for you, too.
Yeah, Georgia's a unique state. I love my home state, but Georgia, we do things slower than everybody else, unfortunately. We've got momentum. We've gotten farther than I've been doing this back from when I was in the legislature. The first ESA bill was introduced in 2015. We've been banging our head trying to chip down that wall. For the first time ever this year, we got it passed out of one of the chambers, and we came within 6 votes in the state house. So we've got 16 Republicans who are holding out on us. We're working on them. The pressure is mounting on
They have
them.
quotes around that Republican,
Yes,
right?
that's
Yeah,
right.
sure,
yes.
sure.
But they're watching. They're watching North Carolina. They're watching all these other states do this, and the pressure's mounting. Now, just recently, Governor Kay Ivey in Alabama said it's going to happen there.
Right.
If that happens and North Carolina does it, then Georgia's completely surrounded
Right.
by school choice
That's
states,
right.
and so that helps us say, look, we don't want to be last. Georgia may never want to be first, but we sure don't want to be last. And we sure don't want. No offense to our friends in Alabama,
Right.
we can't get passed by Alabama, right? That's just.
Right. Yeah, we're breaking a few
We gotta
dishes
get it
in
done.
North Carolina.
Yes.
But David, you've been covering this for a long time. The majority of North Carolinians on both sides of the aisle want school choice, and most of them are thinking about a new alternative for their kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with this new expansion of the Opportunity Scholarship Program
Sure.
that's going to happen this year, it's going to make North Carolina even more attractive compared
Right.
to a lot of other states. I mean, even for me and my family, I have 3 small children, and one of the reasons my wife and I want to stay in North Carolina is because of these great school choice programs. So that's another aspect that I don't think we think about a lot, is that it actually attracts people to the state when
Sure.
they know they have options, as opposed to being in a different state where they only have the one option that they're stuck in, or whatnot. So I think North Carolina is rising up as a result of these.
I think so.
school
We've
choice
talked about that
programs.
actually, that for economic development, that's something that a lot of companies are worried about, that will their employees quit if they come down and North Carolina's public schools aren't great.
Yeah.
And school choice is a rising tide that lifts all boats. We've had 29 studies on this topic nationwide. 26 of the 29 studies find statistically significant positive effects of school choice competition on the outcomes in the public schools. So this doesn't destroy the public schools, it makes them better. They
Sure.
up their game in response to competition. And it's also emerged as a political winner. It's not just a GOP litmus test issue, it's a political winner overall, because a supermajority of Republicans, Democrats, and independents support school choice. Look at what happened to Terry McAuliffe in Virginia against
Right.
Glenn Youngkin, lost on the issue of education. Democrats used to be up on education by double digits for decades,
Sure.
and now we've seen a flip because parents, again, they want alternatives. They saw that the schools were closed. They weren't listening to them. They felt powerless. They don't want to feel powerless ever again.
Sure. Actually, while you're talking about that, you had a great tweet out this week that speaks also to North Carolina's Parents' Bill of Rights a little bit. Tell us about the case. What's happening in California?
Yeah, there's actually a school district called Chino Chino Valley Unified School District in California, where they went against the state. They have a Republican control of the school board, and they have a basic policy, which is to inform parents if their child is at the school saying that they want to change their gender.
Okay.
So you have the superintendent of public instruction, Tony Thurmond, a Democrat, and also the attorney general filed a lawsuit against that local school district trying to undo their policy. So you basically have these authoritarian state officials fighting as hard as possible to keep sexual secrets about children from their own parents. It's just totally bonkers how they basically believe kids belong to the government, and that's not a popular policy with Republicans, Democrats, or independents.
Sure.
So I think the parents are going to win this war that the unions and authoritarians have waged on their families once and for all, and it's because parents are paying attention.
Sure. What do you think about that, Jordan?
Well, I want to go back to something that David mentioned.
Yeah, of
He
course.
said that North Carolina is especially attractive to his family because of these educational trends. Despite working for the Manhattan Institute, my family lives in California.
Okay.
And we see what's happening in our state and the control from Sacramento and some of the more deranged, if you will, metro areas that are highly populated. And we look next door to Arizona, that's starting to look pretty good. A lot of
Right.
Californians feel the same way, and education's a big part of that.
North Carolina is growing tremendously, and a lot of the reason it seems like everybody's coming from the far west and the northeast. Do you think that that's part of it? You're one of those folks that are thinking about it.
Most definitely, along with the cost of living, other challenges in these metro areas such as San Diego, where I live, education is right there as a tier 1 issue.
And you mentioned Arizona. They're the first state or second state that went universal on school choice, with Doug Ducey leading the way. They did so with 1-seat GOP majorities in each chamber. If they could get it done, states like Georgia should be able to get it done with stronger majorities. And their school choice program is overwhelmingly popular. Since they've opened the floodgates and gone universal,
Right.
they went from a small program with 10,000 students enrolled to now over 60,000 students enrolled, a 6-fold increase or more in less than a year. This is popular. Parents want it. and that's why the unions are so terrified of this competition.
So wave of the future, what's happening in Georgia? He said Georgia should be doing it. What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen it in other areas, right? Georgia has a good homeschooling laws,
Okay.
and we've seen it more than double.
Sure.
African American parents leading the way on that front. Charter schools are growing. The demand for charter schools is growing. We have in Georgia 14,000 kids on a wait list for charter schools. So, as my friend Professor Ben Scafferty says, the market is speaking.
Sure.
So that's what's
exactly
happening,
right.
and
Free
and
market.
we just got to break through to those rural legislators and show them that the market is speaking, and they need to answer the call.
And look, it's not a Senate problem because all Republicans voted together in
Yep.
favor of school
Right.
choice this year, and other rural states have school choice. It's not a rural problem either, I don't think. The argument you'll hear in these rural districts of people who are already supported by the teachers unions is they'll say, on the one hand, this ain't for me. The public school is the only option, they'll say. But in the next breath, with a straight face, they'll try to tell you that this will defund their great rural public schools. Well, one, if they're so great, you should have nothing to worry about. But two, if it's true that the public school is the only option, you should be the last person saying this is going to defund your school, because where are the kids going to go? Where's your money going to go?
Now, in North Carolina, the funding for things like Opportunity Scholarship doesn't come out of the budget of schools. Is that right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's through the state appropriation,
Okay.
and so the funding for OSP, it goes to the private school but on behalf of the student.
Okay. So it's
and-
not reducing the amount spent on public
Correct.
schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And one interesting point, though, is that in North Carolina, we have about 1 in 4 students who are now in a school of choice, like a charter or homeschool.
1 in 4?
1 in 4, yeah, or a private
Okay.
school. So I think one of the difficulties for opponents of school choices is more parents are given options
Sure.
and more children are enrolled, it becomes increasingly more difficult for them to roll that back. And I
Right.
think we're reaching a point now where it really is increasingly politically unfeasible for them to do that.
Right.
And that's what they're really scared of, is when people are given options, they like it and they want to
Sure,
pursue
and it
that.
crosses political lines.
I can point to, we have
Yeah.
one brave Democrat legislator who voted for the school choice bill in Georgia. The full weight and power of the Democratic Party came down upon her, and her message was essentially, listen, in my district, we have schools where 3% of the students read on grade level. 3%. So what's your answer? And so eventually she switched parties.
She pulled a Trisha Cotham.
Yes, pray for her, because she's in a district that Biden
Yeah.
carried by 89%.
Oh, wow.
But she's carrying that message. She's saying, listen, we have to do this. This is, in her view, and I agree with her, she's doing what she believes is right for her constituents, no matter what the party label is. This, in her view, this is right for her constituents. We agree. But that's the kind of, we need more politicians who are willing to fight that fight, even if they have to go against the grain of their own party.
And I think with them seeing that it's become more of a political winner. I mean, look at the midterms. We were expecting a red wave. We didn't really get that. There was obviously wasn't a blue wave, but there was a school choice wave. 76% of the candidates supported by my organization, the American Federation for Children, and our state affiliates won their races in 2022. And we didn't just play in the easy ones. We targeted 69 incumbents in state legislatures and took out 40 of them.
Wow. Jordan, you got young children in schools, and I'm finding that this idea of school choice is not a Republican idea. The Democrats like it too, but you think it's an age thing? You know, your generation, y'all are younger than me. You're used to being able to order on your phone and have something delivered. You're used to choice.
I certainly agree. When, even when we were young, there were a limited number of television channels. Now,
Sure.
as adults, we don't have to consign ourselves to what's offered to us. We go out and find things that we want for entertainment, and education is the same way.
Right.
There are new market entrants that are making things really interesting in this field. And I'm looking forward, as my children get older, to learning about the best modes of education, learning about the schools in our area,
Sure.
and finding the options that work for us. I'm glad that those are available nationally. Maybe not in my neighborhood, though, in the San Diego area.
Yeah, sure. One thing I do want to bring up, switching gears just a little bit, I saw a study from the National Institutes of Health on medical autonomy. So we're talking about Parents' Bill of Rights. We're talking about parents wanting to have control over what's going on in the classroom, the curriculum. The National Institutes of Health talked about vaccines, and they said the principle of respect for autonomy has shown to be ill-suited to face the ethical challenges posed by the current health crisis. Individual wishes and choices have been subordinate to public interests. That is an alarming statement to me. What are your thoughts about that? Because we're talking about the Parents' Bill of Rights and the ability to
I think
choose.
it goes back to how the pandemic was such a game changer for all
Sure.
of this, because I think for the first time there were a lot of parents who really saw,
Right.
in high definition what the lack of choice was like in
Executive
school.
overreach.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well,
Very
this big
interesting.
government clampdown on individual rights when it comes to medical freedom kind of intertwined with the school policies, right, with the masking,
Right.
and that led to a uptick in support for school choice too, because you looked at places like Arizona and Florida, they started creating vouchers for kids who were in public schools that had COVID policies that they didn't agree with.
Right.
I mean, these are
can't
all
learn through a
problems
screen,
that are
yeah.
fixated in the one-size-fits-all monopoly that no matter where you fall on the issue,
Sure.
you're going to have a problem if it's a one-size-fits-all policy, and that whether it's curriculum, whether it's the COVID policy, and the only way forward through freedom as opposed to force is to allow families to choose for their own kids.
Right.
These
right.
aren't new ideas, right? I mean, this
Right,
this
yeah.
has been going on for decades and years and centuries, all throughout human history. The idea that there's some superior class of people
Yep.
who
Right.
can tell the rest of us how to live, and that's not freedom, and that's not what has worked throughout human history. So whether it's vaccines or school choice or you name it, folks need to resist this and rise up against this, and every time they see it, and that's
Sure.
what we're seeing that happen, right?
Yeah, right. Jordan, how do we protect these personal liberties moving forward? That's the big question, right? That's what we're talking about, because now everybody's paying attention, even the people who are not policy experts.
Well, I am an observer of these issues. I'm not
Okay.
an expert, but my colleague Ilya Shapiro is someone who spends a lot of time
Sure.
thinking about these constitutional questions. You know, Corey thinks about them a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to this proliferation of people who are putting deep thought into these to learn myself.
Yeah, of course. What do you think? How do we protect
I
them?
mean, I would say when it comes to school choice and choosing for your own kids, when it comes to parental bills of rights and whatnot, is to get as many people enrolled and benefiting from school choice programs as possible. You create a new special interest group to fight back against these authoritarians. Look at what happened in Florida with Governor DeSantis. You wouldn't know this because he just won his election by 20 points in the
Sure.
last year. But in 2018, he only won by a fraction of a percent. And the story in the Wall Street Journal, at least according to exit polling data, was that school choice moms tipped the governor's race in Florida. Well, his opponent, Andrew Gillum, was against school choice, and they already had over 100,000 low-income students, disproportionately non-white students, using the program,
Right.
and they basically became single-issue voters to vote in favor of DeSantis, putting him over the edge. And so I think that's the way you protect these programs, by creating more political pressure, and the way you do that is having parents be a
Sure.
new special interest group, essentially.
Don't mess with the mama bears, for sure. you and I have talked a lot about the mama bears. They are
yeah,
vocal in
absolutely.
North Carolina, and that's happening everywhere.
Yeah, they are, and again, to the point of, as you get more school choice programs and more parents are aware of these things and they're enrolled in them,
Sure.
it becomes politically unfeasible to take that away. But one other interesting point, I think Corey mentioned this earlier, was just the exciting aspect of all this is like the innovation that's taking place as well.
Right.
Even just with something like a homeschool hybrid,
Yeah.
where you have a couple days in a classroom a week, a couple, 3 days at home, that sort of thing. There are all these different kind of options that work for different kids. So to see that, unleashed by all of this is really
It
exciting.
is exciting. North Carolina has something called the Career and College Promise, College and Career Promise, where high school students can go take classes at their local community college, leave at lunchtime, and then go home and take them online. It really is interesting.
In Arizona, a big proliferation as they've expanded school choice has been something called micro schools. Like
Okay.
they were doing the pandemic pods when the schools were closed. 5 to 10 children get together in a household. Families are economizing on the process of homeschooling. You get one teacher or guide or private tutor that you hire to have these 5 to 10 students,
Sure.
and it's been beneficial for teachers. I mean, Washington Post actually covered
Make a
this.
little more money, yeah.
They made more money going directly from the family to the teacher. You cut out all the administrative bloat and facilities costs, and so the teachers can make more money, a fraction of the class size. They have a lot more autonomy. They don't have to deal with all
Sure.
the red tape from the government, and so much so that this has proliferated in places like Arizona. There's one big operator named Prenda Micro Schools.
Okay.
The teachers unions are freaking out about it. The NEA actually had an Oppo research sheet on Prenda that leaked to the Wall Street Journal editorial board. They put out an article called "The Teachers Union's Tiny Little Enemy." They had a picture of an elephant afraid of an ant.
Right.
The elephant was the union, the ant
Sure.
was Prenda. And it just goes to show you these new models are a real threat to the status quo.
Absolutely.
But I think also important that we hear a lot about teacher burnout. We hear a lot
Sure.
about teachers leaving the profession. School choice provides an opportunity for them to get back to what they love, which is teaching kids and creating all sorts of new types of schools that are done the way Corey mentioned wiping away the all the bureaucratic overhead. And it lets teachers get back to what they wanted to do, which is teach kids and spark that joy of learning in kids. And so school choice is great for teachers.
Yeah.
It just needs to happen.
Yeah.
And this will spark all sorts of innovation that we haven't even thought of yet.
I'm excited about that. Speaking of innovation, I'm going to change gears just a little bit. You've been writing a lot about autonomous vehicles. This scares me. I don't know if it should. Tell me what you think.
Many of us are scared by this concept.
Okay.
And what I like to point to are the grim facts on the ground with our current human driver status quo.
Okay.
The numbers are quite startling. 40,000 Americans each year are dying in car collisions.
Sure.
Another 3 million or so are sent to emergency rooms each year. So let's keep that in the back of our mind as we're evaluating this new innovative technology of autonomous vehicles.
Sure.
What I think they can do is at the margins trim those terrible casualty figures. And the big way that it can do so is through an application called autonomous ride hailing. These are basically Ubers or Lyfts, but there's no human driver. And the reason why that's going to be something that's, I think, a real game changer for the broad public health problem is that it's going to create a lower cost option for people on Friday and Saturday nights when they've had a few drinks to get into a safe mode of transportation. 13,000 of the 40,000 deaths are caused by drunk drivers each year. So if we can just trim that a little bit, we're going to make a significant difference in people's lives and in our community health and our economic efficiency as well.
That's interesting.
And I point out that there actually is significant data that has been gathered over the last 5 to 10 years on the effect of Uber and Lyft in cities across America, and it has shown that it is reducing fatalities on the roadways, and it is reducing trips to the emergency room. What autonomous ride-hailing can do is lower the cost in a market through a market mechanism to get more people into safe transportation, not force them into it. It's again pluralism.
Sure.
I think it was Angela Dills and Sean Mulholland that did a peer-reviewed study on that, finding Uber reducing fatalities. I was just in Austin for a bachelor party with one of my best friends from elementary school, and there was an autonomous vehicle driving down 6th Street, the party street, and they were doing a better job driving than I would have done. You know, and I don't drink and drive, obviously.
I didn't realize it was already operating.
They were turning into a crosswalk. They were waiting for the people walking by. They were just sitting there. It's like, this is insane.
How do we keep it safe? I mean, how do we keep it from getting hacked and driving
So
off
I
the
think
left?
cybersecurity is a significant issue, and that's something we need to keep in mind across all realms of our economy. You know, whether it's banking, whether it's the military, it's important. So I don't want to downplay that risk that's there. There are very smart people that are focusing on this. And again, the market is the key mechanism here. Those companies know that they have very valuable cargo. And again, the companies that are operating, as Corey saw, are Cruise, which is a subsidiary of GM, and then Waymo, which is a spinoff from Google. And they're operating in Austin, they're operating in San Francisco, and Phoenix as well. So it's interesting, there's a nexus here, I think, with some of the openness to new technologies and new models in education in Arizona, and also with the autonomous driving. We've got it operating at the ride-hailing level in Phoenix, and then they've also been rather open in Arizona to autonomous freight trucking, which is a application of the same technology on a different type of vehicle.
Very interesting. That would really reduce costs, it seems like.
Exactly. About 30%, maybe even 45% of costs from trucking could be eliminated in the course of the next 2 decades from autonomous technology. So major savings, major efficiency gains. People that may have been interested in truck driving, they now are going to be able to do something that is more economically productive in the same field, logistics, or somewhere else. So it's going to eliminate a certain career path in the long run, but it's going to create a lot of new opportunities as logistics get more efficient, more productive.
Sure, Buzz. Actually, you know, the job thing that's going to come up, right? Especially in areas like Georgia. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's. I mean, many of the trucking companies are already struggling to find enough truck drivers right now. So I think fear. Obviously, as technology changes, it creates fear. But I think what we need to do is allow for the space for innovation to continue to take place. And of course, circling back to education, it's important for education and job training to be available, and new career paths to be opened up, as George mentioned. You know, allow and creating easier paths for folks to change careers if they need to, obtain the education that they might need and the skills that they might need to get to those new kinds of jobs that will be opened up will be key.
Yeah, like what we've been talking about, community colleges and being innovative in that way. What do you think about it for North Carolina?
Yeah, no, I think it's obviously a great idea. I mean, even here in Chicago last night, walking around the streets, taking a drive and everything, I was like, that sounds great. An autonomous vehicle, that it's crazy out there.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's exciting what's on the horizon.
There is a lot of fear about it, though. I think people worry about something being hacked, but I guess like a pacemaker could be hacked technically.
Yeah.
You know, that's something new. All right, well, great. Thank you for joining us. Thank all of you. Any parting words? North Carolina is, of course, on the move for school choice. I think we're going to see it.
We're about to fund students, not systems. We're freeing families from the clutches of the establishment once and for all, and there's not a dang thing Randy Weingarten and Governor Roy Cooper can do about it.
All right, school choice evangelist Corey DeAngelis, thank you so much. It's about all the time we have for the debrief. Please like and subscribe. We're going to be bringing it to you every Thursday night. Tonight we're from Chicago, but we will be back home in Raleigh soon. Thanks so much.